heart, God's masculine son spirit. The fact that manhood and courage are connected. Superman is said to be society's ideal man, right? He's Superman. Then there's Ip Man, and so on. The image of a man versus a real man. Is it enough for one to present themselves as a man using drugs, the psychological construct, redefinitions, the redefinement of manhood, and Western conceptions of what it means to be a man in a modern society? No. For that same reason, a little girl dressing like a man isn't really a man, and a grown woman presenting herself as a man isn't a man either. So what does it mean to be a real man? Is it a man who beats his wife to prove that he is better? Well, first of all, sex means nothing. Are you a man when you rape a woman? If you rape a woman and she has an orgasm, are you a man? If she enjoys it and then later on kills herself, are you a man? Well, in the psychological construct, people are taking advantage of people's suggestible and vulnerable mind states in order to find a wife that otherwise wouldn't marry you. Marry that person. And it goes both ways. The size of the penis is irrelevant. Do you have to have a 15-incher to be considered a man? If everybody's penis size becomes bigger and the average penis size is larger in the future and you have the penis size of old, are you less than a man? Are you a relic of the past and less than a man? No, it is irrelevant. Selflessness, however, is of the utmost importance. If you had a choice to either save your wife or 1 million people, which one should you choose? To choose your child over 1 million people. How about a child over 1 million people over the course of generations? How about a child over God? Certainly one must choose the divine order, and there is no other way for this reason. Maturity. Absolutely. But what does it mean to be mature? Does it mean that you live on your own and you're quite successful? In a crony capitalist society where it's led by the people who are the biggest children of all, the people who have fixated on toys to the point where they sacrifice human lives by the millions every year, the tens of millions. Being like them? Is that what it takes to be a man? Of course not. That's what it takes to be the biggest bitch of all. You're moving toward being a bitch, being a kid. They never grew up. That's why they see Christianity as children's stories. These stories are for children because as a man going through life, you realize these lessons if you are the wise observer. These stories are for people who are young-minded, if you will, and the purpose of them is for them to wisen up, to wise up. The acceptance of God's plan is the highest form of maturity, if not a higher form. Being a dedicated man to God, to show your children one must be willing to sacrifice everything and everyone for God. Again, this is one of the highest forms of the acceptance of God's plan, if not the highest. So that's the highest degree of accepting God's plans, or it's up there. A willingness to kill and die for God. Courage, discipline, dedication, loyalty to God, determination, all these things in as far as the divine order. A willingness to accept and respect those who are greater than you. There is an order. And I could use a Christian example, but I'm no longer going to use the Bible as an example to put an emphasis on the fact that these aren't just Christian values and truths. These are universal truths. These are truths that existed before the Bible was written. These truths were well known by the martial artists of old, long before the Torah was ever written. The ability to perceive manhood in others, regardless of them being drugged, regardless of technology, messing them up, etc. Being mature enough to transcend these social norms that prevent you to see, that prevent you from seeing that I'm the top martial artist. To look at my older videos and say this guy was coherent up to this point. To hear my newer videos and to hear me reference the older videos that they have taken down, etc. Your ability to see these things. This is why sparring is so important, because it shows us who is more consistent with God. The top martial artist is the Superman in reality. The fact that they needed to invent comic book characters proves that their society lacks solid examples of Supermen. The fact that they needed to use stories to define Christ and parables shows that their society lacks a solid example of a Messiah in the form of a leader, etc. There is no recorded history outside of the Bible of the Christ at this point. Why? Because their societies, their historians, lack one solid example of a Christ-like figure. And I believe he did not do miracles as such. These are stories with a moral. The appearance does and doesn't matter. Again, that goes back to transcending the social norms. Why is this person dressed this way at this point? But again, does this person look like is he a calm guy, right? You look at the movie Ip Man. This is why certain truths from this movie, neither Superman nor Ip Man presents you enough information in a straightforward manner that leads you to the conclusion of what it means to be a man. You have to apply your experience and your insight and your understanding. And you need to apply lessons from other stories. But the wise observer doesn't need a single story. He just needs to observe with trueness of voice, with heart and courage, with the willingness to accept and respect others who are greater than them, regardless of gender, culture, etc., race, etc. So Ip Man looks like a calm guy, but he can outmaneuver and beat guys up in the movie. The story is that the ruffians are beat up by the guy who has more of a baby face. Appearance does and doesn't matter for this reason and more. He who much is given, much is expected. Again, do we need the Bible to know this is true? If your policy kills millions of people, then you are a bigger murderer than the person who doesn't have the power to kill that many people in the first place. So therefore, where you were supposed to man up makes you far more of a bitch than someone who doesn't have that power. Once you are in the position of Pharaoh or something high up there, and you do not act like a man, you are a sniveling bitch, and let every bitch that dates you, marries you, and has your kids be cursed for 1,000,000 trillion infinity. She's a bitch. Now, using the scale, how much of a bitch is she? Is she the ideal woman because she's some gold-digging, fucking celebrity-looking slut? Or has she taken on the energy of the biggest bitch of all, therefore making her the biggest female bitch of all? That is not what it means to be a man. That is not what it means to be a woman. These are two children playing important, and only children look up to them. Only children raise their children to be like them. Figuring out things that are relevant to being a man, including covert sabotage. I can't stress this enough. If you don't understand what it means to be a man, how could you be a man? If you are propagating the scale of a child, how could you be a man? Part of what being a man is being a positive role model to children. And children are not limited to your children. We are all one race. What you do affects others. Everywhere you go, you're an example. When a woman dresses like a slut, she's an example of being a slut. Did the Virgin Mary, for those of you who are Christian, dress like a slut? Or does the prostitute on the corner dress like a slut? Who is better? So why are you trying to be like one and not the other? I tell you the truth. Shaming a slut is not enough. The divine order, what it means to be a man at the highest level, I can't think of something else, is to find your rightful place in the divine order and to try to secure the true order, especially from the top. If it is important to secure your place in the divine order, how much more the pharaohs? The theme, the ambiance, the atmosphere of a society, the aspirations of the civilians, of the population, of everyone in it, the reproductive process of that society. These are all basic parts of governance, and laws affect these things. To say, do what you want, and we're going to make these laws, and later we're going to make adjustments because we have new problems. Well, you had to consider these things from the start. The foundation was faulty. That's why America and every country in the world that exists in this form, that began at some time in the past to say, we will call this place this. Pretty much every country in the world, if not every country, is built on a faulty foundation. Egypt is probably the only known example of a nation built on a powerful foundation, on a true foundation that later on went astray. So I tell you the truth. When you consider these scales, everyone is right and everyone is wrong. And if you had to choose one over the other, you're better off saying everyone is wrong. If you believe you can say everyone is right and get them to do the right thing by being positive, fine. But that's not how it works, is it? You need to highlight why they're wrong. Beware of the wolves in sheep's clothes. They're in sheep's clothes because they're partially right, but they're focused on the flesh, and that's why they're wrong, regardless if they see it that way ahead of time or not. So women, you must insist on marrying a righteous man and raising a righteous child. That is your role on this planet. That is the ideal woman. The ideal woman selects the ideal man for a husband and brings in an ideal child. Does she not? How could it be any other way? Naturally, do you not give birth to kids? You absorb that divine son spirit from the guy who's in his rightful place in the divine order, ideally, and then you bring in the ideal child in the right spirit, the spirit in which it was given, no ill-gotten gains, in your right place, and the spirit in which it was received, and the spirit in which it was produced. Raw production. I've given you a lot to think about. We'll leave it there.